face it, not everything you make in art is great. Sometimes you have good days, and sometimes you have bad days. Sometimes your art is excellent, and other times your art sucks.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to this new video. In this video, in this second episode of Your Art Sucks, we're going to take a look at this piece, which is an original character. This is one of my characters. His name is Death Monger, and this is a character that I've had in mind for a long time. I have sketches of this character from back in 2003, 2005, somewhere around that time. The character has gone under different iterations, different designs, because I'm not 100% sure, or I wasn't 100% sure on how the final design of the character should be. And so, but yeah, I did this back in 2019, and at that time, I had just started learning how to ink, learning to do finalized artwork. I say finalized because it's inked and nicely done, supposedly, versus just sketch drawings with pencils. So this is a little bit more elaborate to a certain degree at that time when I was drawing back in 2019. And yeah, so just yeah, this art sucks. It sucks really bad. And I'm going to explain why. And there's actually, I'm looking over this, and there's actually about 4 things I can see right off the top of my head that just sucks with this piece of art, and I'll tell you why. That's the whole idea of this series, is to take a look at some of these drawings, some of my drawings, and try to identify in what areas it's weak according to some of the concepts that are universally understood to be correct. I say that because art is subjective, and there's different people like different things. I always say one man's trash is another man's treasure. So what could be great for one person could be horrible for another. So it's just that. No, but there's some concepts that most artists are universally on the same page about. And so I'm going to try to talk in respect to those concepts, and try to point out some things that I could have done in this piece that could have made it better. And so yeah, so this is the piece. It's Death Monger. The idea is that this character is slouching over his victims, and you can see his victims is the people that he's killed. His name is Death Monger, so it would be implied that he brings about death wherever he goes. And yeah, so the number one thing that always pops up to me every time I see this page is proportions. I'm gonna put that right here. Proportions. Now, there's a video that I did, like a live stream video, where I talk about how I work with proportions, and as you've seen other videos before, I use this reference of from Sam Buscema. Right here, this image right here, I use this as a reference for proportions. So if you can take a look at it, there's 8 heads. From the top to the bottom, there's 8 heads, and so the figure should have those measurements. And why is this important? This is important because when you have your character, let's just do something really rudimentary. When you have your character, you should be able to also move that character according to the joints and things that are here. So you can move an arm this way, move an arm another way like this, bend it, bend your legs and whatnot. And so for this character, the character has to fall within what's realistic in this case. If you look at the picture, everything is great until about right here. But then this bottom part, this is a complete disaster. I don't know what, I know what I was going through my mind. I was trying to find a way to show that he's bending his knee, but trying to hide it behind the bodies so that you couldn't really notice or pay attention to the body. But it just made it more obvious and uglier and uglier and uglier the more I kept messing with it. So yeah, so here, I mean, this section here, I have no idea. I have no idea what the heck is going on here. So yeah, and I put this band across his leg, trying to get some kind of 3D effect going upwards, and it just makes it worse because if this is the 3D, if this band goes around his leg, where's the shin? And also that, where's the shin? What is this mass here? Is this a leg? Is this leg stretched outward like that? No idea. The arms are okay. No, the arms are okay. I'll get into that in a moment, but the legs here is just a complete disaster. Now, so what should be done with this case is that he should have it. This should be his head. He could be slouched over a bit more, and then his legs have to be drawn into a certain. This could be his arms here. This could be the other arm holding up their person, but here you got to have the thigh, and then you also have to include the shin, the calf muscle, and also the leg. So it should be something like this. And so even if you bend it, you should be able to see a lot more than you do here. And you should have, the leg. This is really small. Let me see, but you should have the thigh here. This here would be, for example, the knee. And you can see that bending. And you should have the other leg here bending. This knee is pointed towards the camera. You should have this knee bending in that direction. And then you should have this calf muscle here flexing. You should have the feet here. Here you can put the arm, and you can make it slouch. And have a greater slouch. A greater slouch than this. So you could do something like this to make it look a whole lot better than this. Yeah, it just looks horrible the way this has been drawn out. So number one, proportions in that case. Making sure that the figure can move the way it's supposed to move. Doing this kind of thing is very lazy. You should figure this out. You should figure this out before you start doing in the details. And this is where I made my mistake, because at the time that I drew this, I had no understanding of this concept. I had no understanding of that. So I just drew things innately where I think they should go. And it's good, but it won't get you the whole way there on a drawing, especially in comic art and stuff like that. So in that aspect, it needs to be completely reworked. And so yeah, so I have to move the body, so it can bend over this way. Then the leg should be around here, the bottom part of the calf around here, the same way here. This whole section up here should be the leg in the background, and so yeah. So that's the first thing that I noticed. Second thing that I noticed, it's not too much of a nitpick. It's not too much of a serious problem, but it could be like a small nitpick. Would be line weight. Again, in terms of the line weights, you have to compare and contrast the foreground and the background. So, for example, the hand and the head here, this is in the immediate foreground. Then you have the body here is kind of in the foreground because it's almost at the same distance from him and the monster and Death Monger. Death Monger is obviously closer than these buildings in the back. So it's really. It shouldn't happen, but for example, like the lines that I used to draw, see if I can show you the lines that I used to draw this here, this area here, this area here, this here, it shouldn't be as thick as the lines here. And so if this is the line that I'm going to use to draw the background, then the lines that I used to draw this middle ground and then the foreground should be thicker. So it's, in this case, is easily solved. You can just, I can actually right now I can do it if I like, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it like it is. But you can just get an ink pen or whatever you use, whatever tool you use, and just make this line thicker. I would say from about the bicep on downward. So you can like have thicker lines down here and then fade into thinner lines further up as the character is going back some. And then so for example here, you have thicker lines. Thicker lines here, thicker lines around this body at least, and then the rest could just be left alone. But just this area here could be improve with line weights. So line weights, I mentioned line weights in the previous video of Your Art Sucks, and line weights is basically the thickness of the line. So for example, I draw this line at this thickness, and I can also draw the same line at a greater thickness, and then even greater thickness. So when you do comic art, normally the rule is that the thicker the line is, then the closer that object is to the viewer. So the thinner lines we understand it as being things that are in the background, and the thicker lines are what appear more in the foreground, closer to the viewer. So better line weights in this case, no, because yeah, everything is. I think the term is, what they call it is deadline. Deadline, when everything is the same, when everything has the same line weight, and so everything is the same all the way throughout, from beginning to from the foreground to the background, everything is the same. So that's a problem with this drawing, and it wouldn't be so much. Well, I'm sorry. In this case, it's not that much of a problem because it's just one character. He's the central focus. There's nothing else that could distract your view from the character. You could take a look at this, but the main focus, or if the main thing that your eye goes to is these two circles here, the eyes. So your eyes get drawn to this. So this is noticed, after you take a look at the drawing. So in that sense, you can get away with the line weights in this picture, but for the most part, that's something that you should work on. That's something that I've worked on, and in the case that you see that you have that problem, so line weights would be number 2. Number 3, in my opinion, rendering. There is no the rendering in my case is a problem. There is no defined rendering. It's just lines everywhere I can go. The lines make no sense. They don't help also to establish what kind of material it is, what kind of fabric. The lines help with none of that. For example, here, if you take a look at this, I'm just doodling lines everywhere. There's no real pattern. It doesn't help to define the shape, nothing. The same thing here in this area, especially this arm here, is just tattered with lines, and you can't really tell if I'm trying to hatch it or if I'm trying to fill stuff in. You can't really tell. There's horrible hatching here, horrible rendering at the back. This area here also, in this area also. It's just really, really bad. Here for the bodies, I guess I can get away with it because they're dead bodies, and so these just like to show the damage that has been done to the bodies, to the clothing and things like that. So rendering is not defined. It's just everywhere, and I mean that's how I could best describe my art back then. It was just doing what I thought needed to be done in places where I thought needed to have rendering. Like for example, what is that? So I believe that I've improved that since this drawing, and what I mean by rendering, for example, is you have a shape. Let's see if I can zoom in for this. You have a shape. Let's imagine that this is a bicep. No, what this is this shoulder muscle. I'm not 100% sure on the terminology of that. Maybe somebody can comment that. This is the bicep. This is the tricep. Right here, and then you're going into your forearm. But for example, if the light is hitting this way, and you have the dark sides, if the light is hitting on this right side, then by logic and nature, the dark shape should be on this left side. So this whole left area of the arm should be dark. So for example, when you're doing your shadows, you got to do the shadows accordingly. And so you do that. You do something like that. Something like that. Just to give you an idea. Now you do things like this to indicate where that shadow is. And so when you're rendering, when you're doing these kinds of rendering lines, rendering would be something like these lines. One of the main purposes of these rendering lines is to help define the shape of the thing that you're drawing. It's not just rendering for the sake of rendering. Like, the rendering should help define the shape. So as long as you're rendering and giving it that shape, then the rendering line has a use to it in that case. So that's what that's what you should aim for, and to have those kinds of rendering lines. I mean, if you can do some other stuff and play around like this, and then that's okay. Things like that. You can do lines like this to help show that there's battle damage and things like that. But the rendering has to serve a purpose, in my opinion. So here, for example, this doesn't. It's I have a dark area here, dark area here, dark area here, but then I have light areas here. I have light area here, and I say light because it's lightly rendered versus tightly rendered. Here it's tight because it's dark, and here it's light because it's not as dark as it is in other areas. And so the rendering here is just horrible. Takes away a lot from the figure. Here, for example, if I'm rendering this, then let me zoom back out. If I'm rendering this, then this indicates a shadow, a dark space. And how would you have a dark space if this is where the light's hitting? So yeah, really bad on that end. In some places I get the idea. This is okay, but it's not throughout the image. So the rendering is another thing. And then number 4, probably the biggest problem with this is perspective. This is a little bit difficult to explain. If I take a look, perspective is based on a horizon line. All drawings, any drawing, any image, just any image in general has a horizon line. So your drawing, for example, there's going to be a line that crosses that drawing, which represents the viewer's eye point. And so that means that this is where your eye is looking at. This is the level, your eye level. That's the word. It's right here. And so things above that are seen, with an upshot. Things below that are looked at downward from a downshot. And just to give you an idea, but this isn't accurate. And so the problem in this case with perspective, number one, it would be the buildings. It's impossible for you to take a look at a building dead on like you do in this image. It's impossible to take a look at a building dead on and then have that next building be also dead on, and then the next one also dead on. So nothing. So it's impossible to look at a street and then have all the buildings look like this. It's impossible. If you have your vanishing point here, then the lines have to go in correlation to that. Have to go down towards that vanishing point. So that's something that you don't see here. Everything is just blap 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 blap, just square, lines. I do this crazy thing here with this brush pen to try to hide my imperfections. So I try to hide my imperfections. And just to let you know, I use these Faber-Castell Pitt pens. They come in different colors. And I had these gray ones, different shades of gray. And I use these, for example, like that. I use these, for example, to shade this one. I have a very, very light one, much more lighter than this one that I used to do this, that I used for these shaded areas here. Because the costume is supposedly in black. But even that is messed up because I could have just gone over with black ink. So I used a lot of this. I used a lot of these back at that time. I'm not using these anymore at all. I don't. I mean, it works good, but I just don't like it. I'd rather just have it black and white. So I use that here to try to hide some of the imperfections. The building is just very rudimentary, very fun, very basic. It's just lines. Same thing here. So that is off. And then if I'm looking at this image, I can see that here it's about, I had a ruler. Give me a second. I have a ruler right here. From my understanding of this drawing, the horizon line is about here. So that means that everything below this line should be looked at like a downward angle, and it doesn't help at all with this part here, because this should be at a completely different angle. At the figure should be to reflect that. It would be more like this, but I guess you could try to imagine it like this, but just like tilted downward like that. It's a really complicated angle to draw it at. So yeah, the perspective is horrible. It's very obvious on the buildings, a little bit less obvious on the figure, but it is very bad. And yeah, so those four things, for example, poor proportions, line weights, rendering, and perspective. These are four things that could have helped this to be a much better drawing. And this has actually been bothering me for the longest time. And since this, I have drawn this character again, because he's also coming up in my comic that I'm going to put out. I don't know when, but I'm currently working on creating my own comic. I'm heavily immersed in that right now. And one of the things that I had to do for my comic is redesign this character, because he's going to appear in the comic. It might be in issue 2. I don't think he'll be in the first issue, because in the first one I'm going to set up my main characters and things like that. So he will be in the second issue. And his name is Death Monger. I've already finished his redesign. I like it a lot better than this. And you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see it. I'm assuming in a couple of months from now, because I'm finishing up with concept art. I'm also working on a 10-page short story as an introduction to my characters and the world that I'm creating. And in that 10-page short story, you're going to see this guy take on my main character. So it's going to be really cool. I hope you like it. And yeah, so this is just some of the things that I've noticed just taking a look at this piece of art. And I'm going to continue with this series, because I have a lot of early art that I look back on and I say that, man, this crap sucks. So I'm just going to take a look through it, nitpick it, for the sole purpose of showing you how to apply some of these concepts, how these concepts can affect the art, and how understanding some of these basic concepts can help improve your art. Now, this could be you, this could be someone you know, but you can hopefully, with this information, you can see where some of these mistakes are, and then correct those mistakes. And yeah, so if you like this video, please hit the like button, please share it out, and please tell everybody about me. And yeah, I'll be sure to get back to you with another video of Your Art Sucks. I have a lot more content for that, and also looking at the Behind the Art series, where I take a look at some of my good art. So not everything is bad. I got some good pieces some pieces I consider really good. And yeah, so that's it for me. Thank you very much. Remember, please hit the like button, subscribe, share it out, and I will catch you in the next video. Thank you very much. Take care.